Hello lovelies, I'm so glad to see you, and as always, I hope you're happy, healthy, and if at all possible, safe at home. As you guys know, I have been doing a lot of baking lately, and that has resulted in a lot of sweets around my house. So I thought it was time to try something a little more on the savory side. And this recipe that I'm going to share today is actually one of the most requested by my family members. They just eat it up quite literally. It is called Spanakopita, and if you're not familiar, it's basically a Greek spinach and feta pie. It is super tasty and a lot easier to make than you might think. Now you can have it one of two ways. Some Spanakopita comes in a baking dish or a pie plate, and you basically cut out slices. And the other way is to make them in individual portions in these adorable little crispy triangles that I absolutely can't get enough of. And that is the method I'm going to show you today. Now it all starts with our spinach and feta filling. Now to get started, I have some spinach here. Basically what I did was take a whole bunch of baby spinach and then I blanched it in some boiling water for about a minute or so. That's really all it takes for spinach to wilt down. Once I had blanched my spinach, I basically transferred it to a kitchen towel, and then as soon as it was cool enough to handle, I wrung out all of the excess water. What's really important here is that you want your spinach to be as dry as possible when you add it into your filling. The other option, if you don't have fresh spinach on hand, is to use some frozen spinach here instead. You'll just want to thaw it out and then again wring out all the excess water so that it's nice and dry. Next, we are going to heat up some really beautiful ingredients, and this takes almost no time. Basically, I've got a nice big skillet heating up on the stove over medium heat. You don't want your heat to be too high because you don't want to burn everything. Then I'm going to get a little bit of olive oil into my skillet. And as soon as that olive oil is nice and hot, I'm going to get some green onion into the pan. Now I've just finally sliced my green onion, and I'm going to let that cook for about a minute or so. You could use regular onion in this recipe, but I find the green onion is a lot more mellow and mild in flavor, and I think it's really complimentary here. Next to my green onion, I am going to add some garlic. Now, some people leave the garlic out of their Spanakopita, but of course, I like to go for it when it comes to garlic. I've got 1 clove in here, minced garlic, and I'm just going to let these cook for about a minute or so. That's all it really takes for them to reach their maximum flavor potential. As soon as your green onion turns nice and bright green and you start to smell that amazing garlic, you can go ahead and add your spinach to this. Again, you can see how nice and dry my spinach is here. I just gave it a quick chop once I had wrung out all the water. And the final step is going to be just adding my dill. So fresh dill is super, super common in any kind of Greek cooking. It is one of my very favorite herbs. And guys, that's really all it takes, just a couple minutes on the stove. You can take it off the heat at this point because we're going to allow it to cool before adding it to the rest of our feta mixture. Now that our filling has had a chance to cool a little bit, it is time to bring this all together. And I'm going to do that by starting with 1 egg in my bowl. I'm just going to give this egg a nice whisk. I just want to get it nice and combined. The egg in this recipe isn't essential, but what it does is it helps your fillings sort of all bind together, so I don't like skipping it. If you're not an egg fan, don't worry, you can't even detect it in the final dish. It's just one of those things that really helps with the texture and consistency of your filling. Once that egg is nicely beaten, we'll just go ahead and get our spinach mixture in here. The reason we let our spinach mixture cool, of course, is because we don't want to accidentally cook our eggs. That's why it's got to be nice and cool. And then finally, and most importantly, I think, we are going to be adding our feta to this. So I have got about a cup here of crumbled feta. And oh my gosh, guys, feta cheese in my world is absolutely irresistible. I just love it so much. It's so savory and delicious. It's got so much great flavor. Now, obviously, we don't need any additional salt in this recipe because feta cheese is plenty salty enough. And that's it, guys. How easy was that? Our filling is now prepared. And now, guys, it is time to start constructing our little Spanakopita triangles. And that all starts with some phyllo pastry. Now, if you've never worked with phyllo pastry before, you can usually find it frozen at your supermarket. It's usually found in the same section where the frozen pie shells and the puff pastry is. Now, for our purposes today, we are going to be using these nice long strips of phyllo pastry. And I find the best way to make those strips is just by cutting a section right off the roll. And I'm going to do that with the plastic still on my phyllo. And the reason is I want to keep my phyllo nice and moist, and the plastic is going to help sort of trap that moisture. So I'm going to basically cut about 2 inches worth of phyllo, and I'll just give a nice decisive cut down one side. And you'll see what you end up with is a little roll like this. Now our extra phyllo is going to go into our kitchen towel. We'll wrap it up and make sure it stays nice and moist. And then what we have to work with is this. And you can see we have these gorgeous little strips of phyllo. Now, phyllo is super, super thin. This is why I don't recommend making it yourself at home, because to get it that thin would be very, very challenging. And basically for our spanakopita, we are going to need 2 sheets for our first little triangle. So I'm going to take my 2 sheets, and then I'm going to roll this up, and I'm going to place it in my kitchen towel to keep it nice and moist. Now that I've got my 2 sheets of phyllo pastry laid out on my board, the first thing I'm going to do is to brush them with a good helping of melted butter. Now, some people use olive oil for this, but I find the butter adds a little bit of extra flavor and makes for a really, really crisp little delicious triangle with all of that yummy spinach and feta filling. Once you've got each of your phyllo sheets amply buttered, basically all you're going to do is top one with the other, and then we are going to take about a teaspoon or 2 of our filling and place it in one corner. Now, it is very, very tempting to want to overstuff your spanakopita, especially because that filling is so yummy. But what will happen if you overstuff it is your triangles will start to come apart while they're baking, and they'll start to ooze the filling. And that's not what we want. We want to trap that filling inside. So I recommend no more than 2 teaspoons per triangle. And basically, it's just a matter of folding these up into right angle triangles. So you're going to fold your pastry in on itself, and then flip it over, fold it in on itself again, and then flip it over again until you've reached the end of your pastry. And once you get the hang of it, you can turn these out really, really quickly. This is also a great job for kids to help with in the kitchen. So if you have kids at home who are bored, they can help make the triangles. I wish Elle was old enough to help right now, but she's still just a little too young for folding spanakopita. Soon though. And then once you've got your triangles all prepared, I made about 32 with this recipe, you can go ahead and brush them with a little bit of egg wash. So egg wash is just an egg that's been beaten, and I just apply it with a pastry brush to the tops of each of my triangles. What this does is make your triangles extra crispy, and it gets them nice and golden brown. At this point, they are ready for baking. You can get them into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for between 18 and 20 minutes. When these come out of the oven, they are golden, crisp, delicious. They smell amazing. And the hardest part is waiting until they cool a little bit to dive right in. That filling, of course, is super hot, so you do have to wait, but let me tell you, it is not easy. I thought it would be really nice to whip up a homemade tzatziki sauce to serve with them for a little bit of dipping. This, of course, is optional, but I do love a good dip, especially when it tastes like tzatziki sauce. If you've never made it before, it's actually a lot easier than you might think. Now, I'm getting started with some plain Greek yogurt in my bowl, and to that I'm going to be adding some shredded cucumber. Now, to shred my cucumber, I actually just removed the seeds and then grated it with a grater. The most important thing though is to actually remove all of the excess water from your cucumber before you add it to your tzatziki sauce. So I'm going to get my cucumber right into my bowl. Next, I am adding some fresh dill, just like we had in our spanakopita. I love duplicating these flavors. Dill is always really delicious, if you ask me. Next, I'm going to add some garlic. And when it comes to tzatziki, there's no such thing as too much. I'm adding 1 full clove of garlic here, but instead of just adding it minced, because I don't want to have big chunks of garlic in my tzatziki, I am actually going to be adding it by grating it in using a little rasp grater like this. And it just makes everything more mellow. It gets mixed in a lot more consistently. I'm going to finish this off with some lemon zest and juice, and then I'm going to hit it with some salt and some pepper, give it a good mix, and it's really as simple as that. You have this unbelievably flavorful sauce, and of course, perfect served with these crispy, golden, delicious spinach and feta stuffed triangles that you guys just have to try to believe. Oh my gosh. I don't know what else to say, guys. This recipe is an absolute must try, so I hope you'll try it for yourselves. If you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo, because you know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. Remember, the full recipe with all the measurements and instructions is linked in the description box below, so you can find it there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.